Well, hi everyone, Shaun Humphries here. Welcome to All Things Retirement video series. So in today's video, we're going to talk about being aware of executorship land mines. Now, we'll talk about the land mines, but this will be also talking about who to choose as your executor. What are executorship responsibilities? And we also have a handy checklist that you can take a look at. If you want those resources, be sure to visit our website. If you're watching on YouTube as an example, there'll be a link back to our website. You can reach out to us and we can get those resources to you. Now, land mines, when it comes to executorship, one of the fastest growing areas of litigation in this country are families litigating or launching legal action against executors and powers of attorney for not fulfilling their responsibilities appropriately. And that's becoming more and more of an issue with families where there's second marriages, step kids, where relationships are not very close. You can have situations where in the old days, if there was mistakes made by executors, people kind of look past those and the families figured it out. Today, it's viewed as an opportunity for litigation to extract financial resources from powers of attorney or from executors. So it's a really important area. So understanding responsibilities and on the outset choosing a good candidate for executorship, I think, are some of the ways that you can make sure that these land mines don't take place for executors. Okay, let's begin the conversation, and I guess the first thing we'll talk about is the duties of executorship. There are a lot of responsibilities. Now, it can vary in a first to die situation. So if I have a partner or spouse, and usually you list your spouse jointly on assets, there might be beneficiary designations. That's a very simple estate settlement, and the executor can get that stuff done very easily. Usually as a spouse in a first to die that's dealing with that. Pretty straightforward normally. Now there can be issues, but generally speaking, if families are reviewing things, they're intentional, and they're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, that's straightforward. Where the duties become much more lengthy is often in a last to die situation where you've got, let's say, a couple, there's a first to die, there's a surviving spouse, that surviving spouse then eventually passes away, and now children or extended family or friends or a lawyer or accountant or trusted advisor is helping to settle the estate. So let's take a look at some of the main responsibilities that have to be attended to. So this is a good reference guide. This reference guide with Assante lists all the key responsibilities or duties. So again, if you want this guide, just reach out to us. You've got preliminary steps. Obviously, that's reviewing the will, meeting with the family, if needed to make final arrangements for the deceased, become acquainted with the financial affairs of the deceased, take all necessary steps to ensure that the assets are safe, and contact all beneficiaries named in the will. Those could be some preliminary steps potentially. There's protecting of assets. There's a listing here. It's, making sure insurance coverages are renewed. Real property like real estate is looked after and tended to. So there can be some real maintenance and oversight issues there. Redirecting mail, subscriptions. One of the big ones these days is knowing where usernames and passwords are for online accounts. Then assembling and valuing the assets. Now you're beginning to build an inventory, account numbers, that kind of thing. And if you've appointed someone as an executor and you're looking at your own estate plan, that's just good practice, right? You want to make sure that the details are all listed and they're in a safe spot. The executor knows how to access that information, and it just makes estate settlement much easier. Of course, it could be probate. Generally speaking, probate applies where assets are going into the estate, usually in a first to die situation where there's a partner, through the operation of law, which would be beneficiary designations. It could be living trusts, it could be joint registrations on assets. Not a lot actually goes to the estate, but usually in a last to die situation, a lot of the assets do go to the estate, and now you're having to go through the court process to get those letters probate. Estate administration is listed here. I'm not going to go through those in detail. Estate distribution responsibilities are listed as well. So this is a really handy resource, and if you are an executor, you appointed someone as an executor, I think it's important that you get this resource in their hands. Okay, so that's the first piece, executorship responsibilities. The other thing that I wanted to show you is a bit of a review in terms of a checklist. Mackenzie, my financial, put this together, and again, another great resource a checklist going through all the different responsibilities. This one actually gets into some of the tax filing responsibilities as well. Okay, now we're talking about choosing your executor. Now, like I said, generally speaking, if you have a partner, it's almost an automatic default with estate plans that it's a crisscross between a husband and wife or partner. Usually families would do that. Even if the partner doesn't have a lot of financial acumen, there's probably kids or family members that can provide oversight. And the other thing is that estate settlement in a surviving partner situation usually is less complex, pretty straightforward. Now, when you get to a situation where you're choosing executorship when the last of the couple passes away, it gets a little more complicated. First of all, you need to understand, which you probably already do, but just in case you don't, you're not bestowing some sort of honor on somebody when you approach them to be an executor. It's a very large responsibility that comes along with it, potential legal liability if they don't fulfill the responsibilities properly. Number two, be very careful about choosing executorship from a standpoint of treating everyone equally. You often see that kids are, surviving kids, might be 2 or 3 of them, are named equally as co-executors. Generally speaking, that's not a good idea. It makes it more difficult to settle the estate. What happens if they don't agree on certain aspects of estate settlement? What happens when some of the kids don't live in the same city? It's just not a good idea. So what you want to do is say, who among the kids, if you're choosing children, have the characteristics that executors should have. So what are those characteristics? First of all, they don't have to be financially, really, really astute. I think what they need to have is good common sense, good follow-through, pay attention to the details, are prepared to ask questions, and they're empowered to seek out advice or help if required. If your executor has those characteristics, I think that's a great start. So they don't have to be an expert in this area, but they need to have the common sense and the humility to seek out advice when they need to and to look after the details and be good at follow-through. Number two, ideally, they should be living in the same city. Now, for executorship, you can't appoint executor. If someone's living in the United States, as an example, they would not be a candidate for executorship. But in Canada, they could be in a different province. Executorship responsibilities are such that you can come in, get a lot done over a short period of time, and not have to be in that jurisdiction a lot. And a lot of things can be done through courier and email and phone calls. So I don't think that the person necessarily has to be in the same jurisdiction or same province. I think that at a practical level, if you had 2 candidates and everything else was equal, I would pick the one that sort of lives the closest. In terms of temperament, I think executors have to have a pretty strong temperament and to be able to withstand subtle or not so subtle pressures at times. And so what happens is executors have to act as a bit of a firewall between what beneficiaries may want to see happen and what should happen. It's very important in a last to die situation that the executor doesn't start doing a whole bunch of things and releasing monies until there's real clarity on creditors, the tax bills that might be due. There's a lot of things that should be nailed down first before any distributions take place for beneficiaries. And what you often see, or sometimes see, is that beneficiaries are pressuring the executor, but particularly if it's a family member or friend, to start doing things too quickly, and they succumb to the pressure, and that's where mistakes or issues can come up in estate settlement. The other thing is that in a last to die situation, you could have trusts formed under the terms of the will, and those trusts could be going on for years and years. It may not be fair to have your executor, or not necessarily your executor, but a trustee named under the will, to be hanging around for years and years to make sure the trusts are administered, tax filings are done, distributions are handled properly. And for executorship, same thing applies. There may not be anyone in your circle of friends or family that could actually look after this. And that's where you can have corporate executors. Sometimes law firms will fulfill that. Of course, trust companies have been doing that for decades, where they'll do corporate executorship, they'll do trust management and administration, they'll do estate administration. So where an estate may have a life expectancy that is more than a year or 2 years or longer, and there's ongoing administrative items, you can hire a corporate executor. Now, it can be fairly expensive to do that, but where there are situations where trusts might be around for decades, can you really presume that a family member or friend is going to be around to fulfill that responsibility? Probably not. So you need to be very, very practical around the selection of executors, particularly where there may not be, someone who would put up their hand and say, I'm going to hang around for the next 2 decades to help out as a trustee or trust administration, or as an executor, there may not be at a practical level anyone you could really appoint. And so the corporate executor option might be an option. And there's lots of trust companies that fulfill that responsibility. And sometimes you can have them as a secondary or contingent option where you say to family members, you're the primary executor, but if you're unable or unwilling to act, then we give you the discretion and power to have a corporate executor involved in this work, as an example. So you can give direction to families around that. Okay, so choosing executor, I've been long-winded here, but common sense, a bit of humility, good on the details, are prepared to ask lots of questions, seek out advice where needed, ideally live in the same jurisdiction, and have a strong spine. They can confront or stand up to beneficiaries that can be at times pushy, aggressive, want things to be done quickly, and that's not the way to handle the estate. Estates can be handled fairly quickly, but there's details that need to be attended to. Okay, so let's just leave that section. Now, what I'm showing you here is an executor guide. Again, you can contact our office if you'd like to get a copy of this, and it's a great document to begin working through your estate and also around estate risks. And this is where I get into the whole issue of not just the responsibilities of executors, but this risk profile is a very good assessment to go through. In other words, it looks at family dynamics, investments. It's really a profile that you can work through to assess, are there risks in our family situation that could become problematic for the executor. And so some of the landmines that you can get into are things like I said, family members who are being aggressive. It could be situations where you've done will and estate planning, but you have not been as clear as you think you've been, and now you've got an executor in a situation where they're having to make decisions and there can be mistakes made. The other landmine is if you are appointed as an executor, often people will say yes because people are good-willed. It's a goodwill gesture, and yet more often than not, it shouldn't be an automatic yes. It should be a very considered decision, because the reason that we go through this risk assessment profile is that increasingly, like I said at the beginning of the video, executors are being sued by family members for the fact that they've made mistakes. And like I said, in the old days, families are closer, and if mistakes get made, families kind of deal with it, and no big deal, we'll get this thing settled. That's not the situation in the environment we're in today. So landmines could be a lack of clarity, a lack of training. Maybe the executive that's been appointed was not a great candidate to begin with. There may be some family dynamics that are not ideal, and there's a lot of pressure. And so those landmines can be all around the executor. You need to be very realistic when you're looking at your family dynamic. It's not just, who's going to be in my executor in a husband-wife situation or partner. That's a crisscross. But more importantly, what's the environment going to be like for the executor once both of us are gone, or once I'm gone? And so I'd encourage you to, again, reach out to us to get this risk profile. And there's even estate and executor insurance liability coverage. And you can actually build into your will a paragraph that empowers your executor within a certain time frame after someone dies to get this insurance. And it's just extra insurance, peace of mind for the executors that if they're litigated, if anything goes wrong, they've got this insurance to help protect them. And it may seem like a crazy thing, but again, with the amount of litigation that's going on these days, I think it's actually a good idea to pursue this. Okay, let's leave that discussion and kind of close out the video. So, the estate planning and choosing executorship is just one aspect of wealth planning or retirement income planning. We spend a lot of time coaching our clients to financial success. And it wouldn't be news to you around the power of the coaching model. What does a coach do? They get to know you and your dreams. And when I work with clients and my team works with clients, it's not just about estate planning. It's much broader than that. But there's some important coaching conversations just in the estate plan when we go through it. So we get to know dreams, aspirational goals. We look at the current situation, whether it's a retirement planning engagement or estate planning engagement, to assess where they're at. We'll identify any gaps or opportunities. So we have important conversations about those aspects that can be fine-tuned or adjusted. We'll develop a specific action plan for the client, and we'll provide accountability and encouragement. So accountability is once you work with a coach and they're helping you with the action plan, the role of a coach is to kind of come into your life once in a while. Have you acted on it? Will you be acting on it? And providing good encouragement to help clients cut through the clutter and noise that's around them that keep them from getting some of these tasks done. It's a really important role. And then review and fine-tune over time. Estate plans, that's one of those areas where you don't have to review it as often. I mean, when we work with clients on their investment plan, those are very active engagements. The estate plan, on average, might be every 5 or 6 years. What we say to clients is if you've had changes to your family circumstances, or there's been changes to intestacy laws or tax laws or financial goals, then that probably is a good time to just take a look at your estate plan to see if it needs to be updated. We have something called the gap analysis, whether it's in investment planning, retirement income planning, estate planning. This gap analysis helps to confirm whether you're tracking in the right direction. This graphic looks at the retirement planning area, and often the question that people have is, do I have enough to achieve my after-tax cash flow and dreams? And we have a process we walk people through. And so certainly if you're beginning to think seriously about whether it's your investment plan, your retirement income plan, your estate plan, then be sure to reach out to us. We provide complimentary assessments to see whether our firm is a fit for your needs. You can reach out to me at shumphries@assante.com. Contact phone number is 204-977-8049, and the website is shaunhumphries.com. Anyway, wishing you all the best in your estate planning. It's a really important area, and hopefully I've shed some light on some aspects of the whole area of estate planning and to make it smoother for you and your family. You take care.